All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guru. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 18, and I guess we're reading text 15. I thought I was reading text 14, but I found out that Maharaji spoke on 2 verses and no one told me. So, anyway, what to do?
You can.
I can, whatever. And on top of it, it's a prose verse. So I will make some effort to chant it, but I doubt that anyone will be able to respond. Maybe, if you want. Ketumale pi bhagavan kamadeva swarupena lakshmya priyachir chirkshaya prajapatir duhit Rinam Putranam Tadvarshapatinam Purushayo Sahoratra Parisankyananam Yasam Garbha Mahapurusha Mahastra Tejo Vejita Manasam Vidvastavya Samvat Sarante Vinipadani. Hare Krishna. Anybody want to chant? I didn't think so. Okay, word for word. Ketumale. In the tract of land known as Ketumala Varsha.
In the tract of land known.
Okay. Api. Also. Yes. Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Lord Vishnu. Kamadeva Swarupena. In the form of Kamadeva. Cupid or Pradyumna. Lakshmya. Of the goddess of fortune. Priya Chakir Shaya, with a desire to bring about the satisfaction. Prajapati, of Prajapati. Durhitranam, of the daughters. Putranam, of the sons. Tatvarshapatinam, the ruler of that land. Purusha Ayusha, in a human lifetime. About 100 years. Aharatra, the days and nights. Parisankyananam, which equal in number. Yasam, of whom? The daughters. Garbha, fetuses. Mahapurusha, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mahaastra, of the great weapon. The disc. Tejasa,
Tejasa,
by the effulgence.
by the effulgence.
Udvejita,
Udvejita,
Manasam,
Manasam,
whose minds are agitated.
whose minds are agitated.
Vidvastaha,
Vidvastaha,
ruined.
ruined.
Vyasava,
Vyasava,
dead.
dead.
Samvatsara ante,
Samvatsara ante,
at the end of the year.
at the end of the year.
Vinipatanti,
Vinapatanti,
fall down.
fall down.
Translation. Sukadeva Goswami continued. In the tract of land called Ketumala, Lord Vishnu lives in the form of Kamadev, only for the satisfaction of his devotees. These include Laxmimoni, the goddess of fortune, the Prajapati Samvatsara, and all of Samvatsara's sons and daughters. The daughters of Prajapati are considered the controlling deities of the night, and the sons are considered the controllers of the days. The Prajapati's offspring number 36,000, one for each day and each night in the lifetime of a human being. At the end of each year, the Prajapati's daughters become very agitated upon seeing the extremely effulgent disk of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus they all suffer miscarriages. Purport. This Kamadev, who appears as Krishna's son named Pradyumna, is Vishnu Tattva. How this is so is explained by Madhvacharya, who quotes from the Brahmanda Purana, Kamadeva Stitam Vishnu Upasate. Although this Kamadev is Vishnu Tattva, his body is not spiritual but material. Lord Vishnu, as Pradyumna or Kamadev, accepts a material body, but he still acts spiritually. It does not make any difference whether he accepts a spiritual or material body. He can act spiritually in any condition of existence. Mayavadi philosophers regard even Lord Krishna's body as material, but their opinions cannot impede the spiritual activity of the Lord. Namo Krishna Padaya Krishna Prestaya Buddhaya Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharana Nirvishesha Srimati Prestaya Deskarani Kumapativachalam Pangam Langaya Tengrinya Kripatam Maham Vande Shri Guru Grantham Om Agnatmiranda Syaganam Shivakaya Chakshuru Nirantarayana Tasmai Shri Guruvaya Namaha. So, what to say about this verse and report? The first thing that I thought of was how amazing is the Bhagavatam, and how amazing is that Prabhupada gave us this Bhagavatam, and we read and accept this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is often very, to use a colloquial expression, far out. It's kind of out of our purview of normalcy. There's many stories in the Bhagavatam which stretch our acceptance of the Shastra. Right? I mean, even in Bhagavad Gita, we have this one chapter in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna shows Arjuna the universal form. And in that form, Arjuna can see everything in the entire universe, upper, middle, lower planetary systems, all in one place. Now, if you think about that, what that means, how that's possible, it's very difficult to consider how it's possible. And very often, Prabhupada would say things that would test our willingness to accept the Vedic conclusion over the mundane conclusion. One such thing he said, very emphatically, was that we never went to the moon. Now, we don't think too much about going to the moon right now because it's not right in the headlines. But when I first became a devotee in 1968-69, there was a moonshot. And supposedly someone landed on the moon. And it wasn't a very exciting thing. I mean, it was exciting that it went. Everybody thought it was exciting. But when they showed the pictures, the moon planet was a pretty boring place. It was just rocks, and it wasn't anything, and he was kind of like big and fat because he was wearing this funny suit, and he was kind of floating around. And he stuck a flag in the ground, and that was it. And we used to have a joke. There was a cartoon that, you know, he went to the moon and he came back with a moon rock. And it's in a glass container, this rock from the moon. And it cost like $45 billion to achieve that feat. I remember when we were out on Harinam in Buffalo, New York, and some reporter came and stuck a microphone in my face. And he said, "What do you think of the moon landing?" And I said, "Well, we've made pretty much of a mess of the Earth, so now I guess you're ready to start making a mess of the moon." That was my philosophical answer. But Prabhupada said we never went to the moon. He said they didn't go to the moon. That wasn't the moon. That's not what the moon looks like. And the moon that they think they went to, they call the moon. It's not the same moon, Chandraloka, that we speak of or that we usually think of as the moon. And some devotees actually left the Hare Krishna movement because they couldn't accept that we didn't go to the moon. The scientists said we went to the moon. Scientists know everything, isn't it? So this Bhagavatam, it's designed to kick out dharma projita kaichavo chaparanonia matsarano satam. That it kicks out all cheating religion, kaitava dharma. Everything that is a pretense is wiped away as we walk through the Bhagavatam, as we read the Bhagavatam. And more it becomes that way until we get to the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam and we meet the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. And we get glimpses of his greatness, glimpses of his amazing activities, glimpses of his amazing creation, glimpses of his amazing devotees. But when we really meet the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the 10th canto, we have to hold on to our seatbelts, because then we find that this, young boy opens his mouth and the entire universe is in his mouth. Mother Jasoda looks in his mouth and she sees not only all the universes, but she sees herself looking in his mouth. And here's this little boy who's crawling around and stealing butter and eating it and smearing it all over the place and leaving little butter footprints all over, running away from his mother. Yet when she goes to tie a rope around his waist, it's too short. Right? She takes a rope that they used to tie cows with. Actually, that's wrong. The first thing she takes is a tie from her hair. She takes a string from her that's used to bind her hair. And she tries to tie it around Krishna's waist. And it doesn't fit. It's the width of 2 fingers, too short. And so she gets another rope, a rope for tying cows, and she ties that to the first rope. And you can imagine if it's only 2 fingers too short, then you add another rope for tying cows to the first rope. It's got to compensate for the 2 inches or the 2 fingers that were originally missing in the original equation, right? But still, when she goes to tie it around him, it doesn't fit. So she takes another rope, and another rope, and another rope, and another rope, and all the gopis, the older gopis, they're watching, and they're laughing. They're thinking, this is very funny. So here's this little boy. He's got a waist, which I can see. It's not that big. He's a kid, He's got bells around his waist. But still, so many ropes, so many ropes, so many ropes, and it won't go around his waist. It always comes out 2 fingers too short. And so they bring all their ropes from their home, tie. And there's this huge pile of ropes, an enormous pile of ropes. And Mother Jasoda is struggling to tie. And at the same time she's struggling to tie, she's kind of laughing, thinking, this is ridiculous. How is this happening? How is it possible that I'm tying these ropes around my son, this little boy who sucks my breast and who I, sit on my lap and so many things, and now this rope won't go around his waist, no matter how many times I add. Look at this pile of rope, it's huge. It can go around the whole house, and it won't go around his waist. And she just about gives up. She decides, this is not possible. This is crazy. Something is going on that's inconceivable to me. And then Krishna allows her to tie him. Krishna allows her to tie him. And when he makes that decision, because Yoga Maya gets involved, and she says, Krishna, this is Leela. Mother Jasoda is getting discouraged, exhausted. You should let her tie you. Okay, no problem. Go ahead. So then, all of a sudden, the rope fits. And our acharyas say that what happens is all the other ropes disappear, and the first rope that she took out of her hair, that's the one that goes around his waist. Now it fits. And we see again and again so many stories of Krishna knocking down trees, right? And after he gets tied up, that's not good enough. He gets tied to a grinding mortar. And he takes that grinding mortar and tips it so it's laying horizontally. And then he sees these two huge trees. It's described that these trees, these two Arjuna trees, they were very famous in the courtyard of Nanda Maharaj. They had been there for ages. Everybody kind of worshipped those trees, respected those trees as being very old and very wise, having seen so much in the courtyard of Nanda Maharaj. These trees were a landmark in the town of Nandagram. And then all of a sudden, Krishna sees these trees, and he's very angry with his mother. She went and tied him to a grinding mortar. And she told him that he couldn't play with his friends. She didn't just say, okay, you stay here, you're tied to this grinding mortar. She said, you cannot play with your friends, you're punished. You've been a bad boy, and you're punished. So you can't play with your friends, and you're going to stay here tied to this mortar. And then she went in the house, and he thought, you think that, huh? Think again. And so he tips over the grinding mortar and takes it between the two trees and pulls the trees down. Two shining men come out and offer prayers to Krishna. And all the cowherd boys see it. And when they hear this huge crash when the trees fall down. And then time stops. Time stops. The cowherd boys can't move. The little boys, they're kind of frozen. Can't move. And nothing is going on except that these two men are praying to Krishna and reciprocating with Krishna. And then they disappear, and then time starts again, and the boys come running over, hey, what did you do? That's far out. And then Mother Jasoda comes, and Nanda Maharaj comes, and everybody comes running because there was such a big crash, so much noise. What happened? And out from underneath the bushes, the branches of the tree, comes Krishna, unhurt, grinding mortar tied to his back. Nanda Maharaj says, who did this to you? Who tied you to this grinding mortar? What's going on? Mom. Maya, Mother Jasoda, she tied me. And then there's a whole other Leela there where he gets mad at Mother Jasoda, doesn't talk to her for a few days. So this is just one example of the many examples. Climbing on Putana, going off with Chinivarta, dancing with the gopis for a very long time. So many gopis, all thinking he's with them. So many things. So the Bhagavatam, as we progress from the first canto of the Bhagavatam through canto after canto after canto, we're prepared, our mind, our consciousness is prepared for this Supreme Personality of Godhead who cannot be bound in any way. He can't be bound between our two ears. He can't be bound in our mind. He can only be bound by devotion, by love. And we can't comprehend him with our material senses. It's not possible to comprehend him. So here's another aspect of his creation, which is like, wow, okay. So there's, you know, all the sons and daughters. There's 362 daughters, 365 daughters, 365 sons. The year is 100 days, so that's 36,000, whatever they are. Yeah, their offspring, 36,000, one for each day, one for each night of 100 years. That's pretty hard to understand, right? Prajapati had 36,000 children. I mean, some of us have 2 children or 3 children, and that's a stretch. 36,000 children is a pretty big stretch. But we read the Bhagavatam and we're asked to put our material mundane logic aside and accept the glories of the Bhagavatam, the glories of Krishna's creation, as being beyond our limited sense perception. Our limited sense perception causes us to see a world and accept reality in relation to that world. And as we advance in devotional service, we start to understand that even that world and that perception is extremely limited. Right? Who would have thought, when I was a young girl, who would have thought that there would be such a thing as a box this big that could hold 160 gig of information? That all of Prabhupada's books could be put on a chip this big? That so many things, that a jet would fly, you know, with rooms inside and a second floor and a bar and, you know, rooms for how many thousands of people. Who would have thought that people would have cell phones? Who would have thought? Where did that come from? When I was young, there was no such thing. Right? There was no such thing, right, Maharaj? We lived in a time where there were no computers and no cell phones. How did we do it? It's amazing, right? We didn't even think that those things could exist. And now we think we can't exist without those things. And who knows what will come next? We have no idea. People are trying every day very hard in laboratories across the earth, trying to make some other gadget, some other super duper thing that's going to change the face of the world. And constantly coming up with new things. Constantly coming up with new things, new perceptions. Now they have these glasses that you can put on. And you can see a virtual reality, right? Completely change your perspective. They can take you out of this world without even getting on a plane. And people are playing on the computer in other virtual realities. It's not bad enough that we're in a fake universe, but we have to create a fake universe within the fake universe. And we can spend real money to play in a fake universe and buy fake money, right? We can take out real money, the money that we use in this material world, which is not really real anyway, and then we can buy virtual money and buy stuff that doesn't even exist. It's just someone's imagination. And we can accept that, no problem. People will sit there for hours and do that. And yet, when we read the Bhagavatam, or we hear that we didn't go to the moon, we think, oh my God, I don't know if I can believe that. That's too far out for me. I was speaking once in Spain, last year actually, right after I was here. I went to Spain, and the temple was under renovation. So we had a gathering out in this park. It was a very big park in the middle of Madrid. And there were every species of the 400,000 species of human beings there, and some that weren't quite human beings there. And they were everywhere. It reminded me of Hippie Hill in San Francisco, you know, just so many weird clothes and weird colored hair and rings everywhere and tattoos every place and just doing anything all over the grass, and sounds that were pretty horrific. And there we were, we set up a little place and we had some prasadam and we were sitting in a circle. I told them, you should come here every day and bring enough prasadam for 1,000 people. And your temple will be so crowded with devotees, you won't know what to do with them all. Why are you not preaching here? But I was noticing as I was sitting and talking to all the devotees that they were wearing non-devotee clothes. All of them were, except for myself. And I mean, there's no such thing as devotional clothes. Clothes are not devotional. People are devotional. But still, Prabhupada gave us some attire, and he wanted us to wear it for a reason. And we don't have to wear it all the time. It's not hard and fast. But here we were, a gathering of devotees chanting Hare Krishna, talking about the Bhagavatam, and everyone was wearing non-devotee clothes. And I said, why? Why aren't you dressed as devotees? And the response came a little reluctantly, well, I'm kind of embarrassed, you know, I feel more comfortable. And you look around you and you see these people, they're dressed like monsters from another planet. They're not embarrassed at all, right? They're walking around with purple hair and all kinds of weird things. And they're not embarrassed. They don't feel inhibited at all walking around like some kind of monster from another realm. And yet we, dressed as Vaishnavas with tilak on and dhoti, and we're embarrassed. What's wrong with us? What's the problem? The real problem is that our faith is not strong. And we see when Srila Prabhupada came to America, he didn't know us, he didn't know the country, he didn't know what he was going to find, he didn't have Google, he couldn't check the weather, he couldn't find an Airbnb place to stay, he couldn't do any of those things, but he walked down the street like an aristocrat, with his head held high, wearing a dhoti, wearing white plastic pointy shoes. And he took over New York. Right? He just walked through New York, stepped over the bums, climbed up the tree. He even said the bums, they were very respectful. When I would come, they would move out of the way. Does anybody know what a bum is? No? Okay. No? Okay. Now she found out. So these people, they were kind of derelicts, laying on the ground, intoxicated, dirty. But when Prabhupada would come in his weird clothes, they would move out of the way. They would offer respect. Prabhupada wasn't embarrassed. He wasn't ashamed. And he was completely 1,000,000% convinced that by hearing the Bhagavatam, by reading the Bhagavatam, by studying the Bhagavatam, we would become pure devotees of Krishna. We would go back to Godhead in this lifetime. There's one letter where Srila Prabhupada wrote, and he wrote this letter, maybe I read it to you already sometime ago. He wrote a letter in 1956, I think. Yes. Okay, so he wrote a letter in 1956. Now, 1956 was before Prabhupada came to America. By 10 years, pretty much, 9 years. It was before Prabhupada came to America. He had nothing. He had no money. He tried Jhansi. Jhansi didn't really work out so well. And he was distributing back to Godhead. He's printing them and distributing them and making some small amount of money, very little amount of money. He really didn't have any followers. I think he had one disciple because he had one disciple from Jhansi. So he wrote this letter to the President of India. And I'm only going to read part of it because it's a little long, but you might want to read it. It's an extremely amazing letter. And he says, this is the second paragraph of the letter, at the present moment your excellency is seated in the position of the king by the will of the grace of the Lord, because he's the president. And as a true Vaishnava, I must accept your excellency as a representative of the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna. And as he has expressed himself in the pages of Bhagavad Gita, as such I beg to lay before you, your most exalted honor, the following few lines for favorable consideration, and do the needful in pure consciousness. So Prabhupada has so much faith, you're the king, you're the president, you're a representative of Krishna, you have a responsibility to do the right thing, I'm going to tell you what to do, let's see if you can handle it. And Prabhupada says, he says, your excellency is the representative of Sri Krishna by authority, and I hope Sri Krishna will direct you from within in the matter of my transcendental service to you. I beg to submit herewith that by the grace of Sri Krishna, through his mercy personified, my spiritual master, I have realized most thoroughly that going back to Godhead is the highest privilege of mankind, that it is the supreme perfection of human life. Unfortunately, the present human civilization is very much attracted with the beauty of apara prakriti, unreal material nature, the illusory material nature. And as such, they are overpowered by a demoniac form of propensity in the atheistic setup of civilization manifested in the manner of sense gratification. This tendency is dangerously harmful to the real progress of life. The aim of life should be to make a sincere effort to go back to Godhead. But contrary to this, the tendency is to go to hell, or in the cycle of evolutionary animal life, as it is described in the 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which, by the way, is divine and demoniac natures. Please, therefore, save them from this great fall down. Believe me or not, I have got the clue of going back to Godhead just after leaving my present material body. And in order to take along with me all my contemporary men and women of the world, I have started my paper back to Godhead as one of the means to the way. Please do not think of me as wonderful or as a madman when I say I shall go back to Godhead after leaving my present material body. It is quite possible for everyone and all of us. So I'm going to stop there. It goes on. But Prabhupada is so convinced I have the way for every man and woman in the entire world to go back to Godhead in this lifetime. And then he says at the end, could you give me a donation? And he signs his letter, crying, until then, I'm crying alone in the wilderness. So, give me a donation so I can save the world, please. Give me a donation so I can go around the world and bring every man and woman back to Godhead in this lifetime. And Prabhupada didn't get that donation, not from this person. But he did go anyway, and he did spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. And if you look at the progression, as Prabhupada was writing in India, when he first came to America, he was sending letters. Can you come, send me some help? I'll start a temple. It'll be a Gaudiya Math temple. I'll work under you. You come, give me some funds. I see this beautiful old bank. They only want $1 million for it. It would make a great temple in New York. All we need to do is collect the money. Maybe you can send it from India. These are the letters that Prabhupada's writing, right? And then no one is responding. Then he starts to ask for mridangas and kartals. No one responds to that either. And then he says, never mind, I don't need anything from you. I have my own men and women here. So little by little, he's starting to preach. He's starting to make devotees. He's starting to see that he doesn't need help from anybody. He's got help from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that's the only help he needs. But first, he gives an opportunity for everybody. And now he's giving us an opportunity to help him make every man and woman in the world Krishna conscious. And help them to understand the far out Bhagavatam. Help them to have the faith, develop the faith, so that they can read about somebody having 36,000 children who control the days and the nights, and accept it, and imbibe it in their lives, and go on to the point where they can see Krishna face to face and accept all the wonderful things he does. The fact that he appears as a human child 1 minute, and previously, 2 minutes before, he was a 4-armed Krishna form, with a conch cub, wheel, and lotus in his hand. And where was he born? He was born in a prison. And what happened? He was carried across the Jamuna River. So many wonderful things happen in this beautiful Srimad Bhagavatam, in the Mahabharata, in the Ramayana. Our sense of reality is stretched so that it can grow beyond this material world. Because this material world is very finite, very finite. We have that verse in the Bhagavad Gita, Abrahma bhuvanaloka puna arvatino janama pejutukamte puna janmana vijite. That the material world, this material, from the highest planet down to the lowest, it's all a place of repeated birth and death. It all has boundaries. Everyone dies, and they're born, and they die, and they're born, and they die. And we should understand that in between birth and death comes old age and disease. So it's a package that exists as long as we're in the material world. It exists on every single stretch of Earth. We're not from Earth. That's not where we belong. Birth, death, old age, and disease are not our birthright. Eternity, knowledge, and bliss are our birthright. And in order for us to realize that birthright, we have to establish our eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which means we have to be able to stretch beyond the boundaries that this material body and material mind put on us. And this Bhagavatam is a progressive effort to help us do that. This is just one small part of it. And I'm sorry, I didn't really know I was going to speak on this, so I'll stop there. And maybe there's some question. Yes, a few questions now. Yay, Haribo.
Haribo. There's one quote that the mind is just like a parachute. It does not work if it's not open.
Right. And we think that opening it means liking people, whether they're black or white or Chinese, but then it has to open much wider, right? Much wider. It's true. The mind doesn't work unless it's open. Its worst enemy, Mara said the other day, quoting Krishna. Yes.
You were. Thank you for that. Thank you for the lecture. You were speaking much about our perception and sense of reality. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita at the beginning of 9th chapter, it says that this process is that he will reveal the greatest secret to Arjuna and the highest knowledge, and this process is, or he himself, as I understand, is subject to direct perception through this process. So, on one hand, we are forced to stretch our sense of reality, but Krishna promises or says that he can be subject to direct perception, which will release us of doubts, probably. So, how can you comment? What is Krishna saying?
Well, the direct perception comes from Krishna in transcendental vision. Just like Krishna gave Arjuna divine eyes so that he could see the universal form. Right? He started to show the universal, and I said, whoops, you can't see this. I have to give you divine eyes so you can see this. So Krishna is unlimited. He can open our eyes. Even our spiritual master, we have this prayer, Premanjana charita bhakti vilochanena santat sadaya hridayeshu vilokayanti, that the eyes become anointed with the salve of love of God. And then we have transcendental vision. We say, Om Aganati Marandasya Ganan Ganan. The spiritual master opened my eyes, which were shut tight. He opened them with the transcendental lamp of knowledge, with the power of knowledge. So with knowledge we're able to see both practically and internally. We're able to see a different reality. And we can see it even in our present state. We can see things differently. If you look at Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Gita started with Krishna and Arjuna on a chariot in a battlefield. It ended with Krishna and Arjuna on a chariot in a battlefield. Practically speaking, nothing changed, right? He was still facing Grandfather Bhishma, the armies were still lined up, the horses, the elephants, all these things. But Arjuna's consciousness had changed. By hearing that 17 or 18 chapter discussion, Arjuna was looking at things very differently now. And that's why he said, now, I've heard what you said, and now, karishye vachanam tava, I'm ready to do what you say. But before, he wasn't ready to do what he said. So, our consciousness changes on many levels over a progression of time, and ultimately we'll be able to see Krishna face to face. by his mercy, we'll be able to see. And you see Dhruva Maharaj, he was doing austerities, and all of a sudden, Krishna disappeared from his heart. He opened his eyes, and there was Krishna in front of him. Right? Krishna was in his heart, he was meditating, and then he thought, wait, where did you go? I was just meditating. And then he opened his eyes, and there was Krishna. So Krishna has the ability to give us internal vision and external vision. He's not. Hare Krishna. You had your hand up?
What's actually the difference between Bhajananandi and Goshtanandi?
What is the difference?
Yeah, like why is one Goshtanandi and why one is Bhajananandi?
Bhajananandi is somebody who is more concerned about their own spiritual advancement and not really concerned about broadcasting Krishna consciousness to the rest of the world. Prabhupada was not so much inclined like that, and he raised us in Krishna consciousness to not be like that either, to be Goshtanandi, to consider the ultimate welfare of everybody else. And then there's the mercy factor of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because by thinking of the welfare of others, we get the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And that is the ultimate welfare for us. So we get the mercy by giving the mercy, by sharing, right?
Is there like difference in bhakti? Like I was thinking that this could be...
there's a difference because there's some selfishness. There's some selfishness that I'm thinking of my spiritual welfare, and I'm not thinking of the welfare. The pure bhakti, prema bhakti, is infused with a sense of compassion for all living entities. And so that compassion drives that person to want to share that mercy with others.
So it could be called Sankirtan Bhakti.
Sankirtan Bhakti. If you read the Brihad Bhagavatamrita by Sanatana Goswami, there's two parts to the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, and the second part is a story of Gopakumar and his journey back to Godhead. And it's a long story. It shows how he went through all the different planetary systems, and eventually, he wound up as a cowherd boy in the spiritual world. But the reason that he's narrating his own life story, and he's telling his story to somebody that he sees sitting next to the Jamuna, or near Govardhan. And the reason he speaks to that person is because Srimati Radharani, in the spiritual world, sees this person who's a sincere soul, needs a guru, needs spiritual enlightenment. He says to Gopakumar, who's now a cowherd boy, go down there and be his spiritual master. Go down there and tell him about Krishna. And so Gopakumar goes down, and Sanatana Goswami describes that he wasn't upset, he wasn't thinking, oh no, I finally made it, now I have to go back down there. But he was happy to go down there and share that knowledge. And he says, I think the best way to help you is to tell you how I progressed in spiritual life. And that's how he tells the story. So it starts with that story, and it ends with the way that the story is told. But even Srimati Radharani has that compassion that she's not thinking, well, I made it. I'm with Krishna all the time, 24/7, or 24 whatever, because there's no time. There's no 24 and there's no 7, no 365. I'm with Krishna all the time. I get to serve him all the time. And I'm okay. She doesn't think that way. She thinks, if there's somebody who might be able to serve my Lord better than me, let me bring that person to Krishna. And so she's always looking to see how she can help others serve Krishna. Anybody have any questions on this side of the room? Yes? Loud, I can't hear.
For lecture, you were talking about these clothes and how Srila Prabhupada came on the West and he was wearing Vaishnava clothes and he was so decent and everyone was made by him. Sometimes I'm confused. For example, if we are going to Sankirtan or somewhere preaching, how should we dress? Should we wear Vaishnava clothes or maybe these Western clothes?
tell you from my own personal perspective, and you can ask other people, you might get different answers. How should you dress is not an answerable question. You have to use your intelligence. You have to see the situation and dress appropriately, right? In my TTC2 class, we discuss how we present Krishna consciousness so that we can bring the local people to the temple. And we look at a poster of, I better not say this because I'm going to give the class here. So anyway, sometimes we create confusion. We say Abhishek is a bathing ceremony. And to the Western people in Slovenia, what does that mean? How are they going to come dressed to a bathing ceremony? It could be scary, right? So we have to dress according to the situation. However, that said, we should not remove our Vaishnava attire due to fear of people not accepting us. If we are confident in ourselves and we are ready to field questions and speak to others about what we're doing, then dressing as a devotee, dressing in Vaishnava attire will be a conversation piece, something to talk about. If we're not comfortable, if we're ashamed, if we're uncomfortable, that fear will come out and it will be a barrier. People will feel uncomfortable also. So Prabhupada, he had no concern. I don't even own non-devotee clothes. I don't have any. So, I mean, the most non-devotee clothes I have are a Punjabi suit. That's it, you know. So, I don't feel the need to not dress as a devotee. And I go everywhere. I go to the Middle East, I go all over the place, and it's no problem for me. And most of the time, I find very positive reciprocation. Actually, just recently, I got stuck in Turkey on my way here. I missed my connection, my flight, and I wound up in Istanbul overnight. So I had to go through a whole bunch of stuff. I had to get a visa and blah, 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 in order to stay overnight in Turkey. I had a hotel room and so many things. So I was wearing, you know, what I wear. And I was so tired. I had come from America. I was exhausted. And I must have looked exhausted. Anyway, I was looking all around the airport trying to figure out where I was going to go to get another ticket because the one I had was no longer usable. And there wasn't a large amount of things in English for me to direct my wandering. So finally I found my way over to the Turkish airline transfer desk, which is on the other side of the universe. And I was walking over there and some person, some older man, comes over to me and he says, "Mother," this is what he said, seriously, he said, "Mother, is there some way I can help you?" And he said, give me your ticket and let me help you. You stand over here because there's a line, but Mother, you shouldn't stand on the line. So you stand over here and he took my ticket and he went over, and within 4 seconds he got me a ticket, he got me a hotel room. He told me where to go, what to do. But he called me Mother. Who calls people mothers in this material world, right? Like, where does that come from? Vedas. Well, how did he know to call me Mother? But he called me Mother, and actually I felt more like his mother than I do about a lot of devotees who call me Mother. So Krishna takes care of us. When we surrender to him, he takes care of us. And if we're have conviction of that, we'll see it clearly. So you have to decide what you're going to wear. But, you know, and you don't want to make people uncomfortable either. If your mother invites you to do something with your family and she's uncomfortable, you might want to honor her nervousness and dress in a skirt and, you know, whatever. But don't let your fear, dictate how you dress. I hope that was a good answer. Yes?
Hello, my name is Tahir. I'm from Turkey.
Oh, you're from Turkey. Hare Krishna.
And I have been Hare Krishna is around 7 months.
Uh-huh.
I had previous, I was born Muslim family, and is Muslim family and Vaishnava culture is around 80% is very close, and we call woman's mother.
Okay.
And we grow up and we must respect old people. A woman or a man doesn't matter. We must respect. And my question was, if we able to go to spiritual world, especially Vaikunth and Goloka Vrindana, and is chance to again fall down, because I have fear about these things, because I don't want to come back here.
Me neither. Well, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that we don't have to come back. Once we go back to the spiritual world, we don't have to come back to the material world anymore. Once you establish your loving relationship with Krishna and you've kind of learned your lessons, you don't need to learn anymore. There's a pure devotional relationship with Krishna that does not, now we're no longer, it's no longer necessary for us to come back. Now that said, Prabhupada also said that we always have our independence. So that means we can always choose to come back to the material world if we want to.
Because my question about Hiranyakashipu, he was Hiranyakashipu.
Oh, Hiranyakashipu.
He was pure devotee and he was in Vaikunth and he fell down and I had a little confusion.
Yeah, he didn't exactly fall down. I mean, he did fall down for 3 births, but he was sent down. And that was his punishment because he didn't act properly. Like you said, you always have to have respect. It's very important. He was disrespectful to a Vaishnava. And because he was disrespectful for a Vaishnava, he got cursed to go down. They said, you're in the spiritual world, you're not allowed to act like that here. This behavior here, you're not acting according to your what you're supposed to behave. So therefore, you have to go to the material world. But then they prayed, oh please don't make us go to the material world, we don't want to go to the material world. So then they got a leela, an opportunity to, first 3 births, to have a specific relationship with Krishna in the material world. So although it looks from our perspective like it wasn't a good deal, for them it was actually a pretty good deal because they got to have a nice relationship with Krishna in fighting, and then they went back to the spiritual world. Don't worry, Krishna will take care of you. Thank you. I actually got the number from Ananta Prabhu of some devotee in Turkey when I was in Istanbul, but I was so tired, and they gave me a free hotel room. I just said, forget it, I'm just going to the hotel, I'm going to sleep, I'm not going to look for anybody. But I met the devotee that runs the preaching center in Istanbul. What's his name?
Nrsimha Krishna.
Nrsimha Krishna. Is that who you met?
I was Hare Krishna in Europe.
Not in
I
Turkey.
never heard in.
Okay, well there are devotees in Turkey. There's somebody preaching in Istanbul.
We have a temple president, Sankirtan Prabhu. I am coming from Czech Republic to here.
Oh, Czech Republic.
And he told me he has some connection if you devotee and living in Turkey, but I never know.
You can get from Ananta Prabhu. He went to the GBC college and I met him there. But there is some preaching going on in Turkey. If you ever become really determined to be a Goshta Nandi, you can go back to Turkey and preach Krishna consciousness. Okay, I think I should end. It's late. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Praise Lord,